you don't get to this level of peace without going through some shit. That's what I heard when I was talking to someone today. And I am so excited to welcome you back to the Broken to Brave podcast because I'm going to share Tara with you today. And we met actually in the business program that I'm in, and she has been through some stuff the last 10 years, just a bit, but also I am like in envy with where her life is right now. So I'm like, all right, let's learn a few things. All right, Tara, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi. Well, thanks for having me on, Steph. I'm so excited to connect with you today and share the shit that I've been through, but also how you get yourself out of that. I started off, I don't even know where to begin. It was a rainy day in February of 1984. No, really, where my journey started in trying to unpack my life was when I had a miscarriage in 2012. And that's really where mental health and depression and anxiety and all of these conversations around stuff I didn't understand came to the forefront in my grief from losing that little girl. And it was through that grieving period that I actually went into therapy for the first time. And I also started to question the life that I was building that was seemingly heading on one trajectory with a marriage and family, and everything was falling into place. And then it abruptly stopped. And through that, I gave myself permission to go to beauty school in my late 20s, which is something that my parents would have never been okay with. I had my college degree. I was set to be like mid-level America, corporate America, and decided I'm going to go back to beauty school because all expectations are off me while I'm grieving the loss of a child. And so I did that, and I found I loved it because during the period that I couldn't take care of myself, taking care of other women through beauty services, I became an esthetician, felt really rewarding and gave me a direction to go while I was navigating what family would look like and not having kids at that period of time.
Okay, let's slow down a little bit. Whoa. Okay. Huge loss. One of the hardest things that we can go through.
Yep.
And you're
Very lonely to go through too. Feels like nobody knows what you're experiencing.
No, and depending on if you announced it or didn't announce it, and then the fact that people, in my experience, they don't have much capacity for negative emotions. So like, oh,
everything happens for a reason.
Fuck you. That's
Thank
like,
you.
wow. Okay. Yeah. And so you kind of mentioned mental health, anxiety, depression. Were these part of your experiences and that resulted in you going to therapy?
Anxiety was what I'd had for a long time. I just didn't know it was anxiety. I didn't know that that was what I was experiencing for many, many, many years until I started going to therapy in my grief and the depression, because I was not in a good headspace. Much less we went through a cancer scare shortly after, and then my now ex-husband, my husband at the time, deployed. So it was like 6 months of just my whole life unraveling. So for the first 2 months he was gone, it was bad. I remember at one point, spoiler alert, my sister-in-law was pregnant at the same time I was. We were a week apart. And so she went on to have a baby right around the same time I was supposed to. And so my parents over, I think it was the holidays, went up to go visit my nephew. And so I was alone. And I remember driving in my car. My husband and I weren't communicating much. He was grieving on his own across the world. I remember, if I just drove my car into the street, I don't want to kill myself, but I want somebody to come in and save me because I don't know how to do this and I'm alone. I didn't.
That makes
but
me tear up, Tara.
yeah, that was my family stepping in to say, you need help. I don't know how to, they didn't know how to help me. None of my family is mental health professionals or even understands what anxiety or depression is, even though they all have it. So that was my time to raise the white flag of I need help.
Yeah. And it can feel vulnerable to ask for help too, especially if historically high achieving, high functioning woman who helps others.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What do you mean I need help? No, I'm the one that helps others. That can't be my identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way in therapy, you decided, I'm going to do what the heck I want, which beauty school, which has been off the table, which would never be approved.
Yeah, exactly. Wasn't societally acceptable, wasn't my trajectory in life. Was something I always enjoyed, spas and all that, but that was like, that's not something somebody like me would do, you know? Yeah. And so in that, I started going to therapy, maternal mental health therapy specifically. And this is where I kind of started to understand my anxiety is something separate from me. Like this isn't normal to feel like this all the time. And so it was a lot of talk therapy, which helped me connect the dots. I wouldn't say I necessarily felt better. I think time helped. And I think when my ex came back from his deployment, we were hyper focused. He was not. I was hyper focused on having a kid to be able to replace my grief with something to look forward to. And
Mm.
so the first 8 months he came back, it was just timing of everything. We were not doing anything else, but we were hyper focused on this. And he was trying to like reconnect and reestablish our marriage. And I was like, nope, babies. So we even went to the point of as far as going through IVF. And so even with a little bit of PTSD with a miscarriage, your next pregnancy is not all sunshine and roses because everything you're worried about is the next opportunity to lose that baby. So even that pregnancy was full of anxiety. I remember when my son was finally born, I had this moment. He was like 2 weeks late. It was like 44 hours of labor, and he came out at 10 pounds. And I just remember thinking, wow, look what my body can do. Because for so long, the narrative I had after the miscarriage was I'm broken, right? There's the one thing my body is meant to do is procreate, and I couldn't even do that successfully. And so when I had this giant behemoth of a baby, and I was able to push him out naturally, which, I don't know that I would do that again, but
Yep,
that
I
was,
did that too. Ditto.
right? I don't walk the same after that.
Yeah,
But it
the
was
hips are
this,
not the same.
right?
Okay, sorry.
Do them Kegels. Yeah, I just remember thinking, wow, I cannot believe that I was able to push this kid out, and he's as big as he is and as healthy as he is. And it was kind of almost a completion of, I wouldn't say completion of grief, but it was the closing of a chapter of that grief period and now focusing in on motherhood.
Restoring faith in your body or belief
Yeah.
in your body, trust in your body.
Yeah.
And I know even if people listening don't relate on that level, that they can relate on a lot of other levels around things happening, even like panic attacks, and then not trusting their body to react the way that
Yeah.
they want it to.
Yeah.
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 Wow. And IVF is true.
That's
I did a
fun.
surrogacy journey, and so I got a glimpse of that. And that following a miscarriage, which obviously is how it works most of the time, that is just a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's a lot of pins and needles and getting stabbed and no privacy. I was in a healthcare facility that was a teaching facility, so there were always students and everything and everywhere, and it was a fascinating process, but yeah, it's intense.
Yeah, yeah. If somebody listening happens to be going through that, or maybe a family member's going through that, is there anything you needed to hear? Like advice?
Finding a community that gets it,
Yeah.
because I remember after my miscarriage, every pregnant woman felt like a threat to me. How dare you be pregnant in front of me kind of thinking. What helped me during that time was my therapist. I had to sign some forms to release my information, but she connected me with some other women that had gone through miscarriage. So we were all kind of going through it at the same time. That helped me to almost feel normal with what I was experiencing because nobody in my family had experienced that. My best friend's mom had one like 30 years ago. So she's the only person I felt like could even remotely understand. But when you feel like you're the only one going through it, even my husband, I had felt the baby kick once before I lost her. He was losing an idea of what a child was, but not the whole experience. When you become a mom, the second you find out you're pregnant, right? And so it was a future grief, like all these visions I had of what
Dreams.
being a mom would be like that I was grieving. And then also like the bond that I have, and then having to watch my sister-in-law go through it at the same time I planned her baby shower. I don't know why I did that, but I offered to do that. So when you can find at least just one other person who gets it, who doesn't try to dismiss it, talk it away. I remember another woman that I had worked with had one, and I said, when does the grief get better? And she said, when you hold your baby for the first time, whenever that happens, that's when it won't hurt so bad because you'll understand why everything happened the way it did. I know everything happens for a reason, but I even tell my kids now, because we still honor that child. Her name was Kaya. We have a little ornament for her. My daughter's a little forthcoming. We'll be in an elevator and they'll be like, oh, do you have any siblings? She goes, yes, I have a sister in heaven. She died. And then I have an older brother. She's very much a part of our family understanding so that my kids know this stuff happens. I
really
look
beautiful.
at I've tried to, because part of my grieving process was I don't want her to be forgotten because she could so easily be forgotten. We gave her a name. We scattered her ashes. She was big enough to be able to have ashes that we scattered her in the ocean. Like we really much followed it as a grieving process. Now, the one thing that this is probably going too far, but why not just be raw? I found out I miscarried on a Monday. I did not have the surgery to remove her till a Friday. So there was some heavy trauma to unpack of feeling like a coffin for several days. And like, I remember the night we found out, my family came over and they're like, well, do you want a glass of wine? And I was like, no, I'm still pregnant. It just doesn't feel right, even though I know she's gone. Nobody prepares you for that.
I've never heard anyone say it like that before either.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
So again, nobody gives you the path forward for this. And in a season where you're not used to asking for help, or you don't have a big tribe of women that have gone through this and can hold your hand through it, it can feel very lonely and isolating. And to your point, family members aren't necessarily well equipped to be able to hold space and create emotional safety and let you cry it out. And they're dealing with their own discomfort of your emotions and your grief. And so it just becomes, I think a lot of people just stuff it down. And I think that's what increases the anxiety and the depression and
A
the
hundred
misery.
percent.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. There was
Yeah.
a line that you said, like, finding at least one person who doesn't dismiss it or try to talk it away.
Yeah.
That's key because the vast majority of the world will.
Yeah.
Not, and it's not that they have bad intentions. They don't know how to hold space for their own emotions. So they're certainly not going to be able to do it for you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Where do we go next?
I mean, there's okay.
Yeah. There's so much.
So went on to have another child. That happened all on its own. During that time period, my ex-husband was getting out of the military. And once we had my daughter, he was really struggling to navigate life. We didn't know at the time, but he had PTSD from the military. And what I noticed is once we had my daughter and he was getting out of the military, he just struggled to find himself and find his footing in the civilian world. And coupled that with the PTSD, I started experiencing a very volatile and aggressive version of him. And my fear was he is going to permanently do something to hurt himself, or I didn't know. It was just an experience of mental health disruption that I hadn't experienced. And he started getting very aggressive. Now, he never physically hurt me in any way, shape, or form, but emotional, verbal, all the other things. And so I started over functioning. So in that season, we had, I think, a 6-week-old and a 3-year-old. He was not working because he was just having a hard time. He was trying to go back to school. And so everything was falling on my shoulders. And I thought, as my role as a wife was to step in when my husband's struggling. And so I started over functioning. What I can look at in hindsight was I was actually afraid of putting any responsibility or any emotions or any expectations on him in that season because I thought he couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And so I took on everything. I started my own business. I used my aesthetics license to create my own business. There was one day that he and I were not doing well at all. We got into an argument and I took the kids and I went up to my parents' house. And as I was driving back, I remember thinking, I should probably leave the kids in the car because I don't know what I'm about to walk into. And I came in and he was sitting there and he was more or less okay. He was upset, but he was alive. And the thing that I think really, I still can feel it in my body now, and it's been almost 10 years, was that night when we were talking about it. He said, yeah, I didn't know what you would come home to either. And that for me, when I was worried, I had never experienced suicidal thoughts to that extent where he was like ideating about it. But I just remember thinking, okay, I'm putting him in a bubble. Like I just had this vision of like bubble boy, that there was nothing he can do in this house. I will take care of everything. You just survive.
Yeah.
And that sent on a trajectory of me overfunctioning, not taking care of myself, pouring into everybody else. I remember taking the guns we had in the house out of the house behind his back for years. He didn't know they weren't there. And it became just it's such a blur of a season because they're young kids. I'm probably still dealing with postpartum stuff at that point. And
Yeah,
eventually
for sure.
we went into couples therapy, despite my therapist at the time saying, he needs to be in his own work and then you guys start couples therapy. But he was against that. So we went to couples therapy and the couples therapist, bless her heart, said, yeah, I'm noticing signs of some deeper seated mental health stuff, mainly PTSD. I think I need to work with him on some trauma work. Why don't you guys separate? And so that way he can have a safe space to come home to, because the main trigger for him was the noise level of our children, unfortunately. Anytime our kids would cry or yell or scream because of some military training they had gone through, that sent him into a fight state. So he would just become an explosive rage mess.
Yeah.
So during that period of time, in hindsight, it would have been a great time for us to then divorce at that point because we were living separately. I was in my parents' care. Like it would have been easy, clean, all that. But I still very much loved him and thought we're just going through a tough season. This was right around the time that I had started a business, my previous business, which is coaching salon and spa owners, and got into the online marketing world and met our coach and started working more closely with him. And so what was interesting, as my ex-husband was getting support and help, he was getting more stable. My nervous system could start to let go of all it was holding on to. So I started going kind of into more of a slump, but it was like the healing time until March of 2020, which we had just moved back in together maybe 6 months earlier. The business was taking off. He was back in school. Like things were finally starting to normalize. And then the pandemic hit, which meant all of his coping mechanisms, he was in jujitsu, he was able to socialize, he was able to go to therapy, stopped.
Suddenly eliminated.
And we were in California at the time, so it was really shut down. My
Oh,
son
it
was
was,
just about to start kindergarten,
yeah.
and I was working from home. And so now all of us are in this house. I'm the financial provider, and my industry was tanking. So add on financial stress and debt and all of this. So, and then we're back trapped in the house with the kids again, with the yelling. And he didn't have enough time, I don't think, for his nervous system to feel safe and have skills and tools to be able to
Well,
navigate that season.
that's like, okay, he's built some level of, safety around that and then
Yeah.
totally thrown in the deep end because
Yeah.
then they're home 24/7.
Yeah. There's no
I'm
escape. Yeah.
right. I'm really glad that you brought up finances too, because, and so I'm not sure what else you want to share about
Yeah.
that piece, but I know for so many, money is safety and can be in that season trigger so much anxiety, so many what
Yeah.
ifs, so much catastrophizing.
Yeah. So money for me in that season, it's changed a lot since then, but we never had great conversations around finance. It always felt like it was control.
Yeah.
And so when we would try to have financial conversations, I was the one who was paying the bills, providing the income, and then also grocery shopping and doing all that. So when he would come in and say his opinion on the bills, even just the snarkiness that I have, the tone that I have now, it's still like, it was like, you're not doing anything to either help me make more money or help me stabilize the money. And so it felt like it was adding more work to my plate when I was already capped out and pulled in a million different directions and trying to navigate an industry that was falling apart, plus my own fears about what was happening in the world. And so being the only stabilizing force in that household, as much as I felt like I was self-aware and doing the best I could, it was not a good season for either one of us. So money would have meant safety, sure, but I think where we were at, it just became another thing to fight on and another thing to battle out because we both didn't know how to see each other or communicate healthy or regulate ourselves. Yeah.
If someone's in a season where they're like in the shoes that you are in some way,
Yeah.
they're the breadwinner or bringing home most all of the money.
Yeah.
They're doing all the typical stereotypical female roles, the grocery shopping, the this, the that, and they're finding themselves wanting to control and trying to move from that place to get their partner to show up differently. Is there anything in hindsight now, maybe a lot of things that you would say to that version of you?
So, yes, a couple of things that in hindsight, what I recognize is I was so unhappy in so many areas of my life that money became the thing to try and stuff and fill my life with when I was so empty inside. And so I needed the biggest house. Part of that was to be as far away from my ex-husband as possible, right? Or we needed to live in a good neighborhood. My money issues with my dad of like, if I out earn my dad, maybe then he'll give me the love and validation I seek, even though my dad and I have a fine relationship. But it was all of those subconscious patterns that were operating in the background that I didn't know. I thought my worth and value based on my upbringing was how much I could provide, which is very much a traditional masculine role. And so my ex-husband probably felt emasculated a lot, but also he wasn't earning income. And so it was hard for me to soften and let go when I didn't trust him emotionally to be able to handle even just taking care of the kids while I worked. When the pandemic finally slowed, we moved across country. We moved from San Diego to Nashville as a means of trying to have a better cost of living, a better life. Don't recommend that when you're moving away from your support system during a pandemic and your business is tanking. But nonetheless, here we are.
Here we are.
Right? Like it's choices. But it became a way for me to try and feel better if I could impulse buy or if I could impulse eat. I had all of these coping mechanisms just to get through that, which for me was overeating, a little bit of drinking. I would have a bottle of champagne for dinner, spending, right? Whether it was I was trying to do vacations or I was trying to buy a new car or trying to buy a hot tub or just spending to try and feel safe, happy, at peace. And so I was using all of this external sourcing to try and feel peace within.
Hearing all of that and then seeing where you are today, I
Right?
just am so inspired by your
Back to
story.
the quote of you don't get to this level of peace without going through some shit. I had to learn
And
things
doing
the
some
hard
things
way.
that maybe you're not so proud of. Wouldn't recommend.
Yeah. Yeah. So fast forward to kind of a summary of the last couple of years. Once we moved to Tennessee, I kind of hit rock. I didn't kind of. I totally hit rock bottom. And there was one phrase that our mutual coach offered me in that season because I lacked perspective and I lacked being empowered in my choices. I felt like I was the victim to my ex-husband and his PTSD and the pandemic. And I mean, I was trying to find everything to blame. And it was really hard to take responsibility because these situations I was in were real. They were valid. They were
They were.
actual experiences and
Yes.
the hurt that I was having. But the way he phrased it for me, specifically when we were talking about my ex-husband's PTSD, was he said, tell me, I choose to be with a husband who has PTSD because I choose to be with a husband who has PTSD. And I fought him on that multiple times. I was like, but I don't choose. He has PTSD. I don't choose for him to have PTSD. It's not my choice. He has it. And he's like, exactly. But you're putting the emphasis on the wrong thing. I choose to have a husband, parentheses, who has PTSD. I am choosing to have that husband, and he comes with
Yes.
PTSD. So it was like this clouds clearing where I went, oh, my choice is to stay in a marriage with someone who has PTSD. I was so resistant to living the reality I had created by my choices. And I have this phrase now I say is that there's suffering in resistance and there's peace in acceptance.
Yes.
And when it finally clicked for me that I'm choosing this husband who, yes, has PTSD, why am I choosing that? And I could come up with a list of reasons on my belief in marriage and right? And what was so freeing was kind of the tail end that our coach James put on it. And he said, and at any given point, you can make a different choice.
At any
Any
given
given point.
microsecond, you
Yeah.
can make a different choice, and the vast majority of the world has no idea.
Yes. And the reality is it's my choice.
It's yours. Does that mean that you will love the consequences of going either way? Not necessarily. Does it mean that there might not be some hardships in there or some grieving
Right.
or emotion? No,
Yeah.
that could be in there. But
There's
you
consequences to every choice,
choose.
though. There are
Yes.
consequences to every choice. So pick the ones that you're okay with or best okay with. Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
So in that, I chose to stay married for probably about another 6 months. And then it became a very clear point where I was like, it's going to get much worse if we continue on this path.
Yeah.
So went through the divorce process. And that was a really fascinating season of healing, questioning everything I knew about marriage, what I believed about marriage, what society believes about marriage, what I thought love was. I had said I love you to this person for 13 years, but I felt anything but loved. So it was really just a whole disassembling what I believed about relationships, love, family, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And through that season, I found breathwork again through our mutual coach and through Catherine Zinkina, Manifestation Babe. And that was one of the first times I've ever allowed my body to actually process what it's been holding in, that anxious feeling, that boiling pot of water just under the surface. It had a place to go and an outlet. And I also got to experience a really regulated nervous system in that same experience where we were in Sedona doing it too. So 10 out of 10 recommend that. But I was almost like I was flying over my own body going like, this is where you belong, is to have an impact that you want to have. You can't get stuck in the muck of the 3D world and living in your everyday life. You've got to make sure that you're staying at an elevated or high vibrational state. And so it was through that. That's actually why we ended up moving to Nashville, because I released all attachment to staying where, I grew up in my childhood and my family. And breathwork became my safe space to go through to process everything that I was experiencing outside of breathwork. So I committed to doing a regular, I think I was doing a monthly practice of that here when I moved to Nashville. And that, I cannot recommend that enough for your own self-discovery, your own ability to understand your feelings and emotions. I kind of equate it just turns the noise of the world off, and you actually get to connect back with you, what you want, what you value, taking ownership and accountability. One of the things that I remember experiencing in breathwork, this was about 6 months after I asked for the divorce, was I had this whole identity shift of, oh, I'm no longer someone's wife. It took me 6 months after we had broken up for me to even I can look at men again. I can flirt. I can be me. Who am I as just Tara without being all of these different roles that I had been drowning under for years? And there was also a period where I recognized I can feel how I want to feel. I can feel peace. I can feel safety if I'm able to regulate my nervous system. So I was able to feel amazing after a breathwork session, even though nothing in my outside world changed, even though I was going through divorce and all this kind of crazy stuff that comes with it, being a single parent, single income family, navigating finances, all of that stuff. I had the capacity for it.
Yeah, and you created internal safety rather than looking for it outside of yourself.
Yes, because you can control that a lot more. That's usually, I think, and you tell me your experience of this, but working with people who struggle with anxiety and depression is when they are externally sourcing their sense of safety. It becomes a roller coaster just depending on who you have in any given moment or what you have access to. Whether that's, I work exclusively with men now, but it's It's addiction for them. It's porn, it's cheating, it's workaholics, it's externally sourcing all of their identity. But when you start to learn to do that for yourself, I think that's where that level of peace comes, that no matter what's happening outside of me, I can find a way back to me to feel safe with me, even if things aren't hunky-dory, happy-go-lucky all the time.
100%. Because as the saying goes nowadays, life is going to life. And do you want your emotional state to be at the whim of
Mhm.
this interaction or this
Yeah.
thing that happens? No, you want to be in charge of yourself. And it's bringing that safety and self-trust that
Yeah.
no matter what happens, if they don't respond the way that I want to,
Yeah.
or if the paycheck looks a little bit different, or, any other, hardship comes up, I can trust myself to handle it
Right.
because I've handled literally everything.
Right. Look at your history and everything that you've handled. Maybe not perfectly, right? But
Right.
there's lessons in that. And I think that
Yes.
from everything that a lot of self-reflecting of the last few years, but the statement that I came up with was that pain serves a purpose. So if I'm not looking back at the painful experiences I've been through to learn something and to grow and to evolve, then I've lost the point of living for me, right? I very much
100%.
shifted happiness is the goal of life to growth is the goal of life. If I can know myself more and more, guess what's the best way to learn about yourself?
Yeah.
When shit hits the fan, right? Not when it's unicorns and rainbows. And in the season I'm in, it's very peaceful. I've learned I like to knit and I like to read books, and I'm very much entering my
You little
grandmother
old
era.
lady.
Right? I'm very young, not even close to being a grandma, but I'm in my geriatric years. But I'm not in a season of learning a ton about myself. I'm just coming out of that season. I'm coming into a season of how do I maintain this without wishing it away or sabotaging it? And that's a whole different beast to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to go back to that and the thing that you just said right before it. When we go through the mess, the ups and the downs,
Yeah.
we looking at what was this here to teach me has so much value. I think what most people do is like, well, I wish that didn't happen, or I
Mm,
should have made a different choice, or that was a failure. What was this here to teach me?
yeah.
Because then your system can let it go once you get the learning that you're supposed to get. And that
Because
became
then we don't
evident
carry
for
the
you.
shame either.
Yes.
Right. So I mean, I think men carry a little bit more shame than women, just as if I'm going to genderize it. However, women absolutely carry that guilt and that shame. It's looking at it through the lens of I'm here to learn. And so when I make mistakes or I quote unquote fail, which I could even poke holes in what failure is, or things didn't go the way that I wanted to, or I wish that didn't happen, you are wishing away the lessons that are evolving you into the person that you get to be through expansion, through understanding yourself better. I'm trying to think. I honestly don't regret a single thing in my life because of the lessons it taught me. Now, if I wasn't looking for lessons and I kept cycling the same shit over and over again, yeah, I'd be a little frustrated too. I'd be like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get out of it? And part of that is just like that choice statement. Where am I resisting reality and not living in acceptance? Because if I accept an unhealthy relationship, a bad career, the loss of someone important in my life, anything like that, if I'm living in resistance, that's what's creating the suffering. It's like the reality and where you wish it was, right? And that gap is your suffering. And when you can combine those two, where you accept what is, you go through the grief and the heaviness and the pain and the hurt and whatever comes along with that, and you allow your body to process out the trauma or the feelings of it, then that's where the peace comes in. And you can go, okay, now that all of these things are at play, now that I've messed up, I've made mistakes, I wish I hadn't done that, but now that I understand why, what choices can I make now that don't repeat the cycle to the best of my ability? And that's where we have healthier relationships, we have a better outcome, we have a future that is way better than we could have ever possibly imagined, because you're taking ownership and making the next right step.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I raised my hand at one point because
Preach.
I historically was a life fighter. That's what I saw when I grew up. That's what was modeled for me, like resist life, fight life. And so I thought that's just
How it was.
how it was, what you do. And the freedom that has come from acceptance, and I have been presented that lesson many times.
And continue to learn it.
And
It's got
continue
layers.
to learn it at a deeper layer. My goodness, it's been beautiful. There was something that you also said a couple minutes ago, and I said, oh, I want to go to that and to the thing before, and now I'm blanking on what it was. Do you happen to remember?
Pain, purpose,
If not, that's okay, but it was so good.
somatic works. I mean, that's really, so when I look at my whole life now, and I say this to my clients all the time, we would not be on this conversation had I not gone through all of the pain and the trauma that I went through. Because sometimes when I'm sharing my story, I'll get people who are like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm so sorry you got divorced. I'm not.
Yeah.
Right. Everything. And it's taken a long time to get there. My ex and I had a real struggle for a couple of years after the divorce, being able to co-parent. Even when my daughter specifically had a hard time with the divorce, and she still has moments of, she wants us together, even though she was too young to remember us together. She doesn't like switching between houses as much.
Yeah.
But my ex has an amazing partner. She's wonderful. And so I always say, like, well, yes, maybe daddy and I might have figured it out in some alternate world, but we wouldn't have his partner that she loves and adores. That's great for her. We wouldn't have moved to Tennessee. Like, there's a whole bunch of different things that it's just about that perspective shifting. And what our coach often says is when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change. And so as a coach, both in life coaching and business coaching, that's all I'm doing all day long is just shifting the perspective. There's multiple ways to look at something. So I'm going to use the example that I use. Now, I know we've got listeners who can't see what I'm holding up, but what is it you see with the thing I'm holding up?
Okay. A sun hat, a beach, clouds, an umbrella, sunglasses
Yep.
with
So
polka
it's a
dots on
coaster for
them.
context. Yeah.
Oh, coaster.
So there's
Okay,
a
yeah.
picture. No, you're good. I just want to, for the listeners, I'm holding up a
Yeah.
coaster that has, yes,
It's so
umbrella,
cute.
sunglasses. Do you know what I see?
White.
Cork.
Oh, cork. Ah,
Right?
dang.
Right?
Yes.
So we're looking at the same thing, but we see
Yes.
it differently based on the perspective in which we hold.
Yes.
And that is all when you're trying to have a level of self-awareness and a level of self-mastery, it is literally just shifting how you're looking at something. If you have a toxic parent in your life, right, who's just the worst of the worst, somebody loves that person, right? Your other parent married them or loved them at one point, right? Or their coworkers or their best friends from college think they're amazing. It's because we're all looking at people and our life through a lens of different perspectives. And if you can first challenge the fact that you get to choose whatever perspective you want to have.
We
If
get
it
to
serves you
pick.
to think that person's an asshole, great. Keep living that. But just choose it rather
Yeah.
than living life reactively, just going from one crisis to another. It's like, what are you intentionally choosing? There's times at night where, I've been single for a very long time. And sometimes I'll feel lonely and I will allow myself a night to be sad about it.
Yeah.
Right. And like sit in the, man, I wish I had somebody to share this with. And then the next day, I don't allow myself to feel sad anymore because I actually love my life. There's a reason why I'm intentionally in a season of singleness because I could have a lot of dudes on apps at any given point. I am holding out for a really, really beneficial partnership that lights me up because I know the cost of settling. And I've done that before. I'm not paying it again.
Yeah.
And so it's allowing yourself permission of when it's safe for you to feel the heavy feels, when it's safe for you to feel joy, because a lot of people don't have the capacity for joy and peace.
So true.
And so it's just being intentional about navigating your lived experience so that it's the life that you want and you choose. You're not just a passenger.
And if somebody listening is like pushing back on one thing that you said, where you said, well, you get to choose how you look at it. You don't have to believe the first thought that comes to your mind. You don't have to believe the first. You don't have to believe the first meaning that your mind puts on it. And so in that sense, it's another choice. I get to observe what comes up for me when I have this interaction or this, something happens and then decide, oh, is that just meaning my mind put on it? Do I want to believe something else? Is this valuable for me? Do I want to fact check it? There's so many options.
Right. Because your thoughts aren't facts. They are based off of stimuli and past experiences and what your subconscious has, which is why inner child work is massively impactful because a lot of our beliefs about ourselves are created in childhood when we have very little prefrontal cortex development. So we can't logic and rational like, oh, that dad's an alcoholic because his dad was an alcoholic and he doesn't know how to handle stress. We just experience that and we're very selfish creatures by design going, oh, I must be the cause of dad's drinking or his yelling or whatever. But when you can go back and actually start to heal the childlike version of you that created those beliefs, that's where the adult part of you can start to make intentional choices forward. And that's a lot of the work that I do with men now, mainly when they're going through divorces or in their marriages, when they're struggling, is how do you want to show up as a man you're proud of first? Not what you think is going to make your wife the happiest, because let's face it, we women,
proud.
Right. We as women have hormones that shift. So men have a hard time navigating just our cycles, much less, when we get into perimenopause and postpartum and all that stuff. And so it's like the being grounded, being stable and consistent in who you are as a man gives the woman a safe space to land when her emotions or her body or her external world is causing her a lot of stress and strain. And so if all people could do that, not just men, but men and women, if we could get deeply connected with ourselves, that we're confident about yourselves. Like you and I can't do this work if we're so dependent on people's opinions about us.
100%.
Having a platform means judgment and criticism comes naturally with it. I've been called a cunt on a Tuesday morning in a comment section when I got on Angry Man TikTok apparently one day.
Yep.
Right? It's that's that dude. That's him scrolling first thing in the morning in his little life that he was miserable and didn't like what I said. Okay.
And I've been told that she's going to have her attorney families come after me because I sent her emails for a webinar that she signed up for.
Yep. Exactly. Who can I blame for my own misery and my other people's choices? And that's killing off codependent behavior is the greatest thing I ever did for myself, is that I'm not responsible for other people's feelings, thoughts, and emotions. They are. And I can have empathy and compassion towards that. And the biggest thing is boundaries.
Yes. Yeah. My goodness. I just love how you have really used what you went through in a way, an unexpected way, I would say. Now you work exclusively with men. Like, what? Yeah. And then, beauty school. And then now you're actually just doing inner work. And
my men are like, why do you work with women? I'm like, I just spent the past 10 years working with salon and spa owners. Like, I'm good. But also, initially my phrasing was, well, I couldn't save my ex-husband, so I'll save everybody else's. But what I realized just even in the past 3 months was, it's so that no other woman has to go through what I went through. I wish my ex-husband had a program or a coach of my sort, or even had gone to get help, because it would have made a very different reality of our relationship. And so I think that it's my ultimate feminist move, but it is a way that I love working with men. The men that are ready to do the work give me so much hope, and it heals a lot within me in my relationship to men. And it shows what's possible. When I have men coming on our calls who've been in roommate marriages for like well over a decade, and they start talking about how they had sex, which is so fun when we do, we're like celebrating, like, yeah, buddy, get it. And it's just because sex specifically in relationships is often a symptom and a side effect of the lack of emotional connection. And so when men are expanding their emotional capacity and learning how to hold space or how to take accountability or how to set a boundary with their partner, it then shifts the dynamic that then creates polarity, which creates intimacy. So it's so rewarding.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. And I have a feeling you're going to have a lot of women listening today. Like,
send them to me. I'll fix them, ladies.
How do I get my husband to work with Tara?
Yep. Send them my way. I have no problem with that. I love it.
Okay. Before we talk about how they can find you, I just wanted to ask one more question, unless there's anything else you wanted to say.
No, I mean, I could talk another 6 hours, but we'll keep it brief today.
Okay. So if someone listening is feeling broken, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, what would you say to her right now?
There's 2 aspects of support you're likely to need. One would be nervous system work. Your body is communicating to you the best way it knows how, and you just haven't learned to translate it. It's a language to learn. So understanding nervous system, to me, I didn't have any background on how trauma is stored in the body. I just went to breath work, and that it helps you not to have to think through it or talk through it. It just allows your body to process out, and then you'll feel better, right? Because there's our thoughts and then there's our body's experience. And most of our life is lived through the body and what we feel. So if you're feeling either sluggish, low energy, down, sad, angry, angsty, whatever, those are all experienced in the body. So breath work, 10 out of 10, somatic breath work specifically, not just box breathing. Yeah. And then second to that is, depending on what you're struggling with in life, look for where you're resisting versus where you're accepting, right? Shifting your perspective, whether that's working with you, whether that's working with a mental health professional. How can I stop resisting my life and actually start to create a life that I'm lit up by, and get rid of expectations, what society tells you, what your parents told you, what your career tells you, what your boss tells you, what your husband tells you, like, take all of that off the table and dream of what a life worth living looks like for you. And then just take one micro step a day working towards that. And you'll find in a very shorter period of time than just struggling that you actually are lit up by your life.
Beautiful, beautiful advice. Okay, Tara, how can listeners find you today?
Absolutely. Well, you can find me at Unblock Your BS anywhere. Bullshit belief systems, whatever you want to make a BS believe. Unblock, not unlock, unblock your BS on YouTube, Spotify. We have a podcast. It's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. And then my program specifically for men, if you want to send them my way, is called Healthy Mentality. So genius. But that's
Yeah.
really where we're saving men's lives and we're saving some relationships. Now, that's not a guarantee, but it is a step in the right direction. Whether your marriage works out or not, having a regulated co-parent is also of value.
Huge value. Healthymentality.com.
Unblockyourbs.com. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. So I will put those links in the show notes.
Beautiful.
And thank you so much for coming
Thanks
on
for
today.
having me today. This was awesome.